Welcome to Freshly Recapped. Today, I'm going to recap the movie, Leave the World Behind, a movie about two families who face a series of mysterious and terrifying events while staying in a vacation house during a global blackout. Enjoy the video and watch out for the spoilers ahead. The movie begins with Amanda, a relationship manager for an advertising firm. In the middle of packing her bag, she informs her husband Clay that she has rented a luxurious vacation house on Long Island for a week. This comes as a surprise to Clay, who works as a professor of media studies, as he was not aware of any vacation she was planning. When he asks her what made her rent the house, suddenly she tells him she is tired of making people happy all the time and she has come to the realization that she hates people. On their way to the town called Hamlet on Long Island, we meet their son Archie and daughter Rose, who seems obsessed with the TV show Friends. She asks Clay if she can go to the coffee house from Friends once they are back in town again. Clay tells her he does not think coffee shop is real, it's just a set. Soon they arrive at the vacation house and are impressed with the rented house. Kids too jump into the pool to cool off. Amanda goes shopping at the local mall and meets Ray, a local contractor, who gives her a strange look as he hauls food into his truck. Later, while enjoying their trip to the beach, they see an oil tanker heading their way. As it keeps getting closer and closer, they realize it's about to crash into the beach and begin to run. They come to know it's been happening across the beach the whole day, as there is some kind of issue with the navigation system. Now back at home, they find there is another problem waiting for them as a bunch of wild deers break into their house. As the day comes to an end, the children head out on to sleep in their rooms. But Amanda and Clay decide to stay and play a game of Jenga. While playing, they hear a bang on the door and come to know the owner of the rented house, George, is waiting at the door along with his daughter, Ruth. George apologizes to them for coming unannounced on such a short notice, but they had no choice as there is a blackout in the city. And Ruth informs them they live on the 14th floor in the city, and her father cannot climb so many stairs. George tells them he thought they would understand his situation. Ruth reminds them it is after all their house. When Amanda protests about ruining her vacation, George offers to refund the money. As Amanda and Clay watch, George goes to one of the cabinets, takes out the cash and hands it over to Clay, asking them to stay. He does not want to ruin their vacation. However, Amanda does not seem too pleased with their new situation and walks off. Later, Clay asks her to calm down. Amanda refuses to believe their story and doubts if it's even their house. Clay offers to talk to them again and offers to give back the cash if he gets a bad vibe. As Amanda and Clay try to find out more about their new guests over drinks, they find out Clay's wife works as an arts dealer, who is away on a business trip to Mexico, and her flight is due tomorrow. Between the conversations, when Amanda demands to see his ID, George fiddles in his coat pocket and finds out he has forgotten it, and must have left it in the symphony hall when they left in the hurry last night. Just then they all find out over the airways there is now a national emergency in effect in the country. Some time later, in the basement, Ruth asks his father what else did one of his clients tell him about this national emergency. George asks her to stay put, and not to worry, till they find out more. As they all go to sleep, we come to know the country is now under cyber attacks. Next morning, Rose wakes up Amanda, and plains about her internet being down, as she is not being able to see the last episode of Friends. Soon, Amanda's mobile is flooded with the notification alerts of the nation being under attack, as reports of cyber attacks and power outages pop up on her mobile screen. But when she hands it over to Clay, the notifications disappear. Clay tells her he will drive to the town and find out what is going on if that will make her feel better. Outside, by the pool, Rose finds the deers are now back, in the hundreds. Back in the house, George decides to go out and find out if his neighbors know anything about what is going on. When Ruth asks him about her mom and if she is going to be okay, George assures her she has probably landed in Ohio by now. Out in the town, Clay finds out his radio has stopped working along with the GPS as he struggles to find the nearby town. He comes across a woman walking on the streets all alone, who asks him for his help. However, Clay does not understand her language and apologizes as he drives away, leaving her behind. Ahead on the road, he sees a drone in the sky dropping leaflets from the sky, some of them falling on his windshield. Meanwhile, George goes to check on one of his neighbors and finds the house flooded and abandoned. He manages to locate the satellite phone of his now dead neighbor, and discovers it too has stopped working, receiving no signals. Out on the beach by the house, George finds the dead body of a pilot along with debris of plane crashes everywhere on the beach. He watches the sky in horror, and runs as a plane nosedives and heads towards him, almost killing him. The kids, also out on their own, find an abandoned shanty in the forest, and when Rose tells Archie about her earlier encounter with hundreds of deers and asks him if he knows what it means, Archie tells her why would he know anything about the deers. Back in the house, When seeing Friends on the iPad, Ruth asks Amanda if her daughter Rose too watches the show. Amanda tells her she adores the show. Ruth tells her she too loves the show, but it reminds her of a time that as if never existed. Meanwhile, now back in the house, George tells Amanda what he saw on his trip. As he begins to talk out aloud his fears of what it possibly meant, he begins to scare Amanda. Now worried for her children, Amanda begins to panic. Just then there is a loud sound in the sky in the distance, followed by a shrieking, deafening noise that permeates the air. As Amanda runs out towards her children, the noise becomes louder and louder. When they all gather again, inside the house, they speculate what was it that made the sound, and when Archie asks Amanda if they are going to be okay, Amanda assures him there is nothing to worry about. Amanda confronts George about what he had said earlier and if he has any answers for what they heard in the sky. George tells her he knows nothing, and nothing has changed. Amanda begins to panic about Clay, and prepares to leave to look for him. But just then Clay returns, and shows them one of the leaflets that dropped from the sky. Archie tells them the leaflet is calling for death to America, to the shock of everyone. Thinking they are at war, Amanda and Clay decide to leave at once, and return to their family in the city. But they find the highway blocked by brand new Teslas that pile up the highway on their own for miles. Amanda and Clay drive back to the Scots. Now believing they are at war, they begin to wonder if there is any shelters they can go to. However, they find no easy answers and decide to call it a night. Later, George continues his unfinished soliloquy from earlier with Amanda, and tells her about one of his clients, his richest client, who, a few days ago, called him and moved all his money. And when George asked him if he knows something he does not, his client simply asked him to take care of himself. Amanda asks him if his friend is the reason behind what is going on. George tells her, in times like these, it's not people like him that frighten him, it's the fact no one is in control. Meanwhile, unable to see the last show of Friends, Ruth asks Archie if he knows what happened to Ross and Rachel. Archie tells her she should stop about the show and find something else to care about. Clay tells Ruth about seeing an oil tanker crash on the beach earlier. And when Ruth asks her if that means something, Clay tells her if they were under attacks, their enemies will cut off their oil supplies first. That comes as a shock to Ruth, as she did not think they were under attacks. Their talk is abruptly stopped by a bunch of wild flamingos landing on their pool, followed by the loud noise, making the flamingos fly away. Later, in the night, Rose tells Amanda she saw an episode of West Wing, surprising Amanda, as she tells her mother she is tired of waiting. Meanwhile, in the basement, Ruth complains to her father about sleeping in the basement in their own house. Next morning, when they get up they find Rose gone and Archie pulls out his own teeth. Amanda worries about Archie and wants to take him to a doctor. But George reminds her all the highways are shut. However, he offers to take him to one of his neighbors, his contractor, Danny, who is well supplied and can help. Compounding their problems, Clay comes back and informs them Rose is gone. He is not able to find her anywhere. Archie tells them about the shed they went yesterday. Amanda goes to look for her as Clay and George decide to take Archie to Danny. Ruth stops George and begs him not to go, warning him he will not come back if he leaves her. But George promises her he will be back in an hour. Amanda and Ruth go to the shed, looking for Rose. Not finding her there, Amanda freaks out, and is soon surrounded by wild deers outside the shed. Arriving at Danny's, Clay and George find out Archie is beginning to lose his memories too. However, Danny comes out carrying and asks them to step away from his property. George is surprised by Danny's unwelcome treatment and tells him he came out to check on him. When Danny tells them he is surprised to see them outside under the circumstances, Clay asks for his help taking care of his son. When George tells him he is losing his teeth, and how they can't explain it, Danny tells them it may be that noise, causing microwave radiation. It makes some people lose their teeth. He further tells them guessing from the radio chatter he has been hearing lately he would say they are at war. George asks him for some medicine that can help Archie. But Danny refuses to help, asking them to leave his property immediately, as he can't help them. However, before he leaves, he asks George to try his neighbor Thorne's. They had their basement done some time back. They will find what they need there. When George asks him why he is deserting him, Danny reminds him, in case he has not been paying attention by now, they have all been deserted. But George refuses to go until he gets what he needs. Sensing trouble, Danny pulls out his gun and aims at George, who has his own gun. Clay decides to intervene and begs Danny, one last time, for his help in saving his son. He is the only hope now, as he does not know where else to go. Meanwhile, outside the shed, Ruth realizes he is surrounded by the deers. Amanda comes back, and not knowing what to do, starts shouting, and manages to scare the deers away. Danny relents and gives them the medicine for cash. He blames the Koreans for what is happening. George shows them the pamphlets telling him they figured it's the Iranians. Danny theorizes, considering they have made too many enemies, it looks like some of them teamed up. Before leaving Danny's, George tells Clay his worst nightmare has been confirmed, and this is what he had been waiting for confirmation. He thinks they are under what is considered the most cost-effective way to disrupt and paralyze the country before destroying it with civil war, and whoever started it is waiting for the people to finish it. On their way back to the house, Amanda and Ruth see their neighbor Thorne's place and watch in horror from a distance as they bomb the city. The movie ends with Rose entering a billionaire bunker, stocked with foods and medicines, as the news of the White House being under attack by rogue armed forces flashes on the screen. The screen fades to black, as Rose finally sees the last episode of Friends. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell for more of these videos in future. Thanks for watching.